Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Honestly, Let's Talk. I'm your host, Todd Nesloni, and each week I try to bring you a different conversation over a wide variety of topics. We have talked about all kinds of things, but when I was thinking about what I wanted to chat about this week, one thing that kept coming to my head is something that I've been talking more and more about this year and getting to know other people who have been having this conversation too. And I thought, especially with quarantine and pandemic and social unrest and teaching and any other job that you're going through now, everything is a lot right now. So I thought, let's talk about something that a lot of people are struggling with, and that is depression and or anxiety. And so I invited 5 friends on tonight to join me in this conversation. So I'm going to let each of them kind of introduce themselves and tell you where they're from. So we'll start with you, Alexia.
Hi, my name is Alexia. I am a kindergarten teacher. So that's where I'm from. I'm from Atlantic City, New Jersey. She's a dancer teacher. I am also a dance teacher, a choreographer, and I try to blend the two. And I just love everything about education and dance and bringing that joy and engagement to the classroom.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Daniel, you're up.
Hi, everybody. I'm Daniel Patterson. I'm out here in California. I am the director of a therapeutic high school in West Los Angeles. I was a high school English teacher and high school assistant principal for 14 years before that. And I've committed my work now to education in a therapeutic sense. I'm really trying to bring attention and services, tangible services to students that are accessible, relevant, culturally appropriate, and activated beyond like a seminar or sort of a talking point for a school district. So real solutions.
Awesome. Thanks for being here, Daniel. Jonathan?
Hello, everybody. I'm Jonathan Howell. I am currently a principal at an intermediate school in St. George, Utah. I've been at this school, Fossil Ridge, for the last 5 years now, almost 6, I guess. I've been in education for 25 years as a classroom teacher, coach, assistant principal, and principal. And I'm just happy to be on board here tonight.
Thanks for being here, Jonathan. Next up, KT.
Yes, sir. First off, shout out to Daniel, man, for English teachers. Fun times, man. But Kendrick Thomas, assistant principal here, Hicks Elementary and A-Leaf ISD in Houston, Texas. Man, been in education since 2001, most of my career, special education. So, of course, you take a lot home with you for a lot of years doing that. Now I do also a podcast that goes out each week, the Daily K, and I talk to educators, entrepreneurs. It's just a full media company, so it's a lot of fun. And my radio show each week that goes out to, I think we have 900,000 documented listeners, so we're having fun, man.
That's awesome. Killing it. And last but not least, one of the funniest and most real people on social media is Sojo. Thanks for being here. Tell me about who you are.
Thank you so much. Mine is less impressive than KT. I probably have like 5,000 people that follow me. It's not 900,000, but it's like very close. So I am Johora Warren, aka Sojo. That's the name that was given to me during quarantine. I have been teaching for 7 years. I'm currently a 5th grade teacher in the gifted inclusion classroom. My passion is in teaching writing and ELA, and also teaching social justice and teaching my children to be good humans. I am a mom of 2. My son just turned 5 yesterday, and I have a 3-year-old. And I am a grad student at LSU online. I've never seen the campus before. And that's about it. That's me.
Awesome. Well, thank you, 5, for being here. I'm really pumped to kind of dive in and have this conversation today. And so, as we talk about this, the topic today is depression and or anxiety. And so I'd love to start with the first question just being, when did you kind of realize that depression and or, because sometimes they go together, but sometimes they're completely different things. But when did you realize that depression and or anxiety was something that you personally struggled with? And Kendrick, we'll start with you.
Man, I would say what kind of brought it on was losing my brother and one of my best friends 2 weeks apart. And so my friend passed away, but the family messaged me through Instagram. And so if you don't know, if someone's not your friend, it goes to a different box. So fast forward, I didn't get the message. I kept calling, going by her house. Nothing was happening. I didn't find out until after her funeral what happened. And so I missed like that. And you never get closure from that relationship, which is I struggled to, and that was a year ago. So after that, man, with my brother as well, life changed. And like the lucky part was I had a therapist throughout the full time before that, but she caught me kind of slipping into it. So all of this happened around last year. I kind of slipped, and life like was just not the same. But that made me create this channel that I worked through, and that was the way that I kind of worked my way out of that depression. But around a year ago, it got pretty dark, man, because I just needed that closure.
Yeah, I can imagine, that shock of finding out you lose someone, but not only that you lost him, but you missed the opportunity to attend the funeral. I can see how much more emotional that would be in that moment. So I appreciate you kind of sharing some of that honestly. Daniel, you and I have been friends for a little while, and I know some of your story and some of your path, but talk to us a little bit about when you realized that depression or anxiety kind of had a hold in your life.
I mean, early age. I've lived with depression and anxiety my entire existence. Even in this moment right now, right? I have elevated anxiety, fear of judgment, fear of what I'm going to say. It's a constant. It's a companion. And so I didn't call it by its name when I was younger because I didn't know what it was, and I had no access to therapy, and I lived in a rural community, and it was. We think about the stigma now, it was like tenfold then. I'm 41. So it's traveled with me and really shaped who I am, and it ebbs and flows, right? It's like kind of like when you travel, sometimes it's like the size of a carry-on. And sometimes I feel like I'm traveling like on a 3-week trip and I have all of this baggage I'm pulling. So I did well for a long time. And then I lost my best friend to suicide unexpectedly in, I guess this was in 2016. And that really, really triggered me. And also that's when I quit my job as an assistant principal, and I understood that I had a deeper calling to really get into the therapeutic space within education. And I'm committed to raising funds for all students to have access to mental health screenings and clinical care, and not let finance be a barrier to that access. I don't know, something I live with every day, but I've kind of tried to think of it as a superpower and not a liability.
Well, I love the analogy you used there too of the suitcases, about how sometimes it does feel like you have one little carry-on that's there, but sometimes it feels like you're going on a 3-week vacation, because you're right. I mean, it's always with us. It's not anything that is eliminated. It's something that we learn how to grow and deal with. And so, Johor, you and I talked, and when you were on my Tell Your Story too, you shared a little bit of your journey as well. And so talk with us about today about when you realized that depression and or anxiety was something a part of your life.
Okay, absolutely. Happily. It's something that I'm very transparent and open about. I haven't always been, but now I see just the direct influence it can have on others. So I'm very open about my journey. So I've always had anxiety, but my mom just called it worrying, but it would be like excessive worrying. So if I forgot a folder at home, it was, oh no, the world is going to stop. My teacher is going to hate me. I am going to get kicked out of school. I'm never going to be able to come back. My mind would automatically go there. And my mom would always say, no, you're a worrier. You're just a worrier. And it's like, now I know that was extreme anxiety. But the depression started to sink in after my first child. So I had my son, and it was a very traumatic experience because I almost died. So there's like that parallel with Black women and maternal health care.
Right.
So my medical staff failed me, basically. So I just went through this traumatic experience of actually physically giving birth and then almost dying afterwards. So it was just a lot of emotions. It was a lot of hormones and things. And there's normally a little period of like the baby blues, but mine never went away. So baby blues are like just a little bit of sadness, but it was to the point where I just didn't want to get out of bed. I didn't want to hold my baby. I didn't want anything to do with my baby. I avoided being around my baby. So I actually went back to work, but I was living in Tampa and I went back to work in Gainesville. So I was commuting like 2 or 3 times a week just because I now see that it was avoiding. I just couldn't handle being around my baby and feeling that extreme guilt. So it was about 7 months in, and I was talking to a group of girlfriends, and, you know, we were just doing like a group therapy session, just informally talking. And they were asking me how I was. And I was like, I have this baby, which there's so many women that go through fertility issues, and I'm not happy. So I felt that I'm like, I should feel joy, and I feel nothing, one. And I also feel extreme sadness to the point where I feel like my life is over. Right. So they said, you need to talk to somebody. So it was probably about 3 months after that I finally spoke to someone and said, I need help. There's something wrong. And so it was about 10 months after having my baby, but I didn't seek like professional help. So I acknowledged it 10 months later, but I didn't seek help until after my second child. So imagine going 3 years without any help, or 2 years without any help, and then finally was placed on medication, and it's been a lifesaver.
Well, you know, I remember, Johor, when we had that conversation on My Tell Your Story, and there were several people who reached out afterwards and just said how much it meant to them about being open and honest about that. And I think, you know, as I've heard bits and pieces of each of your stories, even before today, I'm impacted by it. And so, you know, Alexia, what about your journey? When did you realize that there was something there?
Kind of like Daniel, and it's like a mix between the two. It's kind of crazy. I think, and just like him, like right now, I'm like, my skin is crawling. Like I really have like, it's crazy because in the classroom, like a bunch of 5-year-olds, I'm fine, and then like adults, I'm like, oh my gosh, hide and run away. So when I was little, I think facing some trauma and things like that, and that kind of created a lot of anxiety. And then through high school, I kind of got some help. My mom got me into counseling and dealing with a lot of the things. She was a single mom. I was the oldest out of 6 kids, so I always had a lot of responsibility. And she was working, you know, hustling and doing what she had to do. But I think I became like a mom very, very, like the second mom very soon. So it brought on a lot of that worry, a lot of that, I don't know, just constant worry, constant trying to be perfect, trying to impress everyone. And I think that brought on like a lot of anxiety still to this day. And then like Sojo, when I had my first son as well, that actually, I had the postpartum depression, and I was also in an abusive relationship. So that like, and it brings emotions. I'm not going to do this, but I get doing it. So I think going through that and then dealing, and I actually had the opposite. So where Sojo was kind of like, she didn't want to be close. I wouldn't let my son go to anybody. I would check him. I would have him sleep because I was worried he would stop breathing. Like I was very, it was very scary and traumatic. And eventually what really got me through was my family and my support, and really talking to other mothers and people that experience the same thing. And then I had my second son, and the same thing, finding moments where I just wanted to sleep all day. Even now, just with school and everything and all the pressure, some days it's just like, I just want to sleep and I just want to hide and just go away. And then I have a community of people that are so supportive. So that has really helped me. But it is a struggle every day.
Well, I really appreciate you sharing that, and I think it's okay to show those emotions because people see that this is real to us. And I found it humorous when you made the comment of, even speaking in front of adults, I get nervous because all of us are educators, and I think we all can attest the fact that speaking in front of adults is much more terrifying than it is with kids. And I have no idea why, because kids will be much more meaner and honest with you about what they like and don't like and what you should have done and what you should have wore. But we're okay with speaking in front of them. But I'm the same way. Like, I still get sick to my stomach before every single presentation. Every episode that I do here, I'm like anxious so bad that my wife's like, calm down. You do this every week. Like, you should be used to this by now. So I appreciate you sharing that, Alexia, and just being open and vulnerable. Well, Jonathan, I loved when I had you on a Tell Your Story episode because you really shared your personal journey and then was able to use that to share it with your school family as well. So talk to us a little bit about when you realized something was up.
Wow. First of all, I have major depressive disorder that has since been turned into treatment-resistant depression. I've gone through countless treatment plans, medications. I've had 35 ECT treatments. Just within the last month and a half, I've started ketamine, and it's made a huge difference in my life.
Right.
I first noticed back in middle school. I was an active, normal kid who had body dysmorphia. And that's when I first noticed that something just wasn't right. Every time I would dress or undress or get in or out of the shower, I would just stand in front of the mirror for 15, 20 minutes, staring at myself, looking at my chin and my stomach, which if anyone else would have been in the room with me, wouldn't have seen anything. But I saw this obese, gross, grotesque young man that wasn't worthy of anything. And I didn't know at the time what it meant or what it was. I just had this constant battle with my self-image, and it's something that I still continue to this day to battle with. That's when I first noticed that something was just different. And then as time went on, I started to notice my anxiety levels, like everyone else here has said. Doing this tonight, I was just frightened all day long about doing this. Not necessarily because what it is, but just that anxiety in me just goes to heights that sometimes would cause me to just, like someone said earlier, just walk away and hide, so that I didn't have to deal with that anxiety. And then it turned into depression. And within the last 5 to 8 years, that depression just got so overwhelming that it made it difficult for me to function and to do some of the things that I've enjoyed doing. And it wasn't actually until about 1.5 years ago, as Todd mentioned, that I actually came out, so to speak, and finally shared my story and my background with the community and with our faculty and with our staff. And I just finally had to get that off my chest, because not only was I carrying around that baggage, like Daniel had talked about, that baggage of depression and anxiety all day long, but now I was trying to hide that I had that baggage. Right. As a teacher and as an administrator and as a human being. I was trying to run away from the stigma, so much so that I was making my depression and my anxiety even worse. Mm-hmm. And so I finally just got to the point where I felt like it was time to try to get rid of some of that baggage and just share with people some of the things that I had been going through, and the fact that I was suffering, and that if you would have talked to anybody that had worked with me prior to that day that I shared with the world my story, most people would have had, like all of us can share this. We're really, really good at hiding this from the world because we think we're the only ones that suffer. And one of the most one of the best parts about going through this process individually was the fact that I came to realize that I'm not alone. That's the thing about depression, is it isolates us, and it wants us to think that we're the only ones that feel this way. And so because we're the only ones that feel this way, that's why there's a stigma, and we can't let anybody know that we go through these things. And as you come out and you talk to people and you let people know what you're going through, you share these same experiences, and you're able to help one another, and you're able to understand that, oh, I'm not the only one that feels this way, or I'm not the only one that goes through this, or I'm not the only one that doesn't want to get out of bed. And it's very, very liberating that way.
You know, I agree with everything that you said. You know, this is one of those things, whether it's depression, anxiety, or any other mental health concerns, the one positive thing about the last year or so is that it has become less taboo to talk about, and more people are talking about it. But exactly like what you said, Jonathan, you know, many of us, we hear a title of something like depression or anxiety or postpartum or anything, and we think, I'm broken. Something's wrong with me. If I tell others, they're going to judge me. They're not going to want me to be in this role. They're not going to give me this responsibility, whatever it may be. We set these expectations up until we realize when you talk about it, it helps you deal with it, as well as finding community and seeing that you're not alone. And so the next question I'd love to kind of chat with y'all about is, as we each have worked through our own depression and or anxiety, we've found ways to cope, to grow, to deal, to handle, to observe, whatever it is. We've found ways to exist in this life and do more than just exist. We found ways to keep moving forward. And so I'd love to kind of talk about what paths, and I know some of you kind of alluded to it already, but people listening today may think I have depression. I think I have anxiety. I don't even know where to begin. I don't even know what to do. I'm like what y'all said. I don't want to get out of bed, or I don't want to tell anybody, or this or that. And so we'll start with you, Jahora. What do you do? And I want to start with you because I know I've been following your journey on Instagram. But what has been helping you work through those emotions?
So I want to apologize for my Wi-Fi acting wonky. I think we're on track right now. So a couple of things. One thing I do want to start with is by saying that there are several people who have debilitating depression and anxiety and don't have the words for it. So I want to make sure that we are being good friends and we are being good family members, good coworkers. So if you're noticing that someone might not be able to get the help that they need, they might not be able to ask for help, find ways to support them and kind of assist them on that journey. And whether that be like helping them, sitting next to them when they're giving a phone call. But for me, some ways that I cope. So I had to have medication. Medication is something that I particularly needed. And it's something that I continually take every day. I also just started going to therapy. So I started last year, 2 days, like I went twice, and then I was like, I'm good, I'm cured. I wasn't cured. So I decided, like, I sat and I reflected on why I felt like therapy didn't work. And I decided, well, you know, I was going right after work. It was very late. I was already tired. I felt like I wasn't giving anything, so I wasn't receiving anything. So I decided first thing in the morning, 8:15, I was like, I'm going to have therapy. So I just had my second session today, and I'm like, oh, this is so much better. I think this is how it's supposed to feel. Like when your mind just feels so clear. So therapy and I said medication. And also one of my coping mechanisms is just laughing. And it sounds like so silly, but it's like, when something bad happens, like I take an L of some sort, I'm like, oh, of course that would happen to me. What's next? And just like laughing through it has helped me like not take things as seriously as I did when I was a kid.
Yeah. Well, you said several powerful things there that I want people to hear. And that's one is owning when you need to take medication and knowing it's not a bad thing. There are chemical imbalances that exist in people, and that doesn't mean you're broken. But if you can get the help to fix it, let's do it. Like nobody wants to live in a deep, dark depression or a debilitating anxiety. Nobody wants that. We want to get better. And Daniel, I want to jump to you next because, I attended a presentation of yours in January, and it was probably the most powerful presentation I've ever been in my entire life. It was really game changing for me as a person, just to hear some of the things you talked about, because you put it in such a way where it was like there was no excuses I could have or no deniability or anything, because there were two things that you said that tie kind of back into what Johora said. And I remember one of them, you talked about how if therapy is something you tried and it didn't work, that doesn't mean therapy is not for you, because maybe you didn't have a good therapist. You have to shop around sometimes for a therapist to find the one that fits you. And I had never heard anybody say that. I had always just been under the idea that if you see a therapist and it doesn't work, maybe therapy is not for you. And, maybe you need to go look somewhere else. But the other thing you said that just hit me square between the eyes was you said, as people, we naturally know you should get your teeth checked twice a year. Like that's supposed to be something everybody goes through, unless you're like terrified of the dentist and you don't even go to the dentist, but you're supposed to go twice a year. And so why do we put so much effort into making sure our teeth are being checked twice a year, but we don't even do like even a minimum of twice a year check-ins for our mental health? Like that's even more important sometimes than our physical health. And so those two things alone, I was like, nobody has ever said it like that to me. And it gave me a whole nother perspective over the power of therapy and talking about your issues and not letting a bad therapist get in the way, but also knowing that you don't have an excuse of saying, well, I don't need that checkup. Well, you didn't have to go get your teeth cleaned, but you did because you knew you was the right thing to do. Like your teeth weren't hurting, but you went and got them cleaned because we do that twice a year. So I was like, dang it, like Daniel's taking away any excuse I could have. And there was so much more you talked about, but talk to me a little bit, Daniel, about kind of how you work through and cope. Because like you said in your introduction, it's not anything that goes away. You got to learn how to deal with it. And sometimes it's different. So what works for you?
Well, I think acceptance is a big part of that. You are who you are, and God made you who you are. And that's why I do believe that in my struggles, in my dark times, like if I really rely on that sort of superpower mindset with it, it helps me through. But yeah, everybody should go to the dentist and go to the therapist the same amount of time. We don't wait for our teeth to fall out to go to the dentist, because they clean them. They look for them, and then they dig a little bit deeper and say, hey, come back, let's work on this. That's just like therapy. The best time to see a therapist is when nothing at all is wrong. What we need is like a Tinder for therapy, right? Like swipe right, like where you can like try to figure it out and find your fit, right? I'm working on an app. I don't know. But I think that we could do it. For me, part of my story was addiction, because I had severe trauma as a child. I was bullied. I had no self-confidence. And so I tried to outperform my mental health. I felt like, hey, if I am a high performer, if I get good grades, if I have this job, if I have this like Instagram profile that's just lit, like, whoa, look at me now. It follows you wherever you go. It has no interest. It does not care about how much money you make. It doesn't care about your job title. It is a human level that affects all people. And in terms of therapy, I think part of the problem right now that I'm working on is that access. Like it's easy to say go to the dentist twice a year, but that's assuming that you have dental insurance, right? And so that is like a very like, yeah, that works for people with access. But what about kids that don't have access to that? And I think that's where we're failing our students and our children. The van drives up and checks them for hearing and for vision, but where is the mental health screening? And that is a proactive solution. We live in a reactive model as it comes to mental health. And I really think if we can formalize to normalize is what I like to say. So for me, sobriety, I had to give it all away to get it all back, because that was my coping skill, and I was just trying to run from myself. So I'm 6 years sober, and every day is a struggle, one day at a time. But that whole mindset of like going to AA and really owning it and the surrender, I feel like when you surrender to your mental health and you give yourself a gift of acceptance, this is how God built me, this is how I'm made, and how can I use this to serve others,
Right.
And connect with others. And so that's why I'm very transparent. Everything I talk about or post about is 100% real and vulnerable. And some people don't like it, and the trolls will do their trolley locks thing, but whatever, don't feed the trolls, because you never know whose life you can touch by just sharing your story.
I love that. That was powerful.
Facts.
Alexia, what about you? What are you doing to kind of cope and work through?
So when I was younger, I don't know, it was always like writing in a journal was always like soothing for me. And if I needed to get my feelings out or I needed to talk to my mom, I always wrote her a letter because I couldn't find the words to say it. So I know that just journaling and writing is one of the things that I do. And when I see myself kind of slipping a little bit, I'll start to do it a little bit more. But I find, obviously my name's the dancer teacher, so dance from when I was little, I started late. I was always a cheerleader, but I moved to dance and I kind of fell in love with it. That was my passion. And on those days, like I was just like, I have dance, like, and you just leave it on the floor. And I still teach now. Out of high school, I started working at a dance studio, so that helped me even more. And then I started working at a fitness. So I teach like hip hop fitness class. And unfortunately, with the Rona and all the things, the gyms closed down. So I was teaching like 5 classes a week. And in like June, it kind of like I lost all of that. So I started like doing Zoom classes, and I do it with adults. And I think that just staying active and just dancing or singing or finding that little bit of joy, even though we're all experiencing, difficult times and that depression, I find like, and having like that community that kind of pushes me, because I still teach for them. And a lot of my people that took my class at the gym, they lost it too. So it's like, I have to find that little fire. And it's like, oh, I really don't want to, but I know I need it. So then I'll push myself. And then it's like, after it's like, oh, okay, this is good. So just finding that dance, even if it's fitness, even if it's running, for me, it's dance. I can't run to save my life, but but I think finding that time for you and finding some kind of activity that just really helps me. And the class.
I want to jump in really fast because Alexia's dance classes, y'all. If y'all have a chance to jump in, it's at 7 p.m. on Mondays and Fridays, the start of your week when you don't want to do anything, and the end of the week when you still don't want to do anything. You jump in those classes, and listen, she makes you feel like you are a rock star, like Paula Abdul or Janet Jackson. Like, you're doing great. And it's like, I know I'm like, I can't figure it out.
I love it.
She makes you feel good.
Free too, so I offer it for free. I want people to not be afraid. If you want to shut your camera off, you can, but I want to encourage, especially as teachers and educators and just adults, we don't take that time for ourselves. We kind of like push it away, and it's important to say, you know what, no, I'm going to find time. And it brings community together, even though we can't really be close, but we can still be.
I'm going to do it. I'm doing it.
Hey.
I may do it because nobody will be able to see me. Like I can do it from home. I'm not going to show up in person. But I did love Alexia when you were like, I don't run, because I'm the same. I don't run unless there's only one taco left at the taco truck. I'll run for that. But like, I'm not running for anything else. But I love that. So you'll have to check out, everybody, the dancer teacher on Instagram, and go follow her there and go check out one of her dance classes. Maybe we'll all join this week sometime. But Thanks for sharing, Alexia. Well, Jonathan, you kind of talked a little bit about some of the things that you have found helped and didn't help and quit helping, but now work. And so talk to me a little bit about what are you doing to cope and manage it and work through?
Well, I'm going to be honest, and it's not going to sound very sexy. I have to do the things that people with depression don't want to do. I have to take my medication. I have to go to therapy. I have to get outside. I have to exercise. I have to eat, and I have to make sure I eat right. I don't necessarily do anything that's novel or new. It's just I have to force myself to do those things that most people with depression don't want to do. We don't want to talk to a therapist. We don't want to go outside. We don't want to go, for a ride, with the dog. Or I have to force myself to do things that I don't want to do. And I know in the moment it's my depression talking. Mm-hmm. And so the thing that I've come to learn is most of those things that I don't want to do are things that I know that if I do them, they're going to help me get better. And the one thing I was doing is I want to go back to something Daniel mentioned. I've done a few treatments that insurance doesn't cover. My ECT treatments and currently the ketamine I'm doing, insurance doesn't cover those things.
Right.
And one of the things I'm lucky is that I'm able to find a way to pay for some of those things. When I know there are kids in my school or parents or teachers in my building or friends that I have that need the same types of helps I need and need the same types of helps that have helped me get better, who don't have access because of the situations that they are in. And so one of the things that I think is important as a school principal is to really help my school community get as much access to mental health providers as possible, because there are a lot of things that have helped me that, quite frankly, there are a lot of people that I know wouldn't have access to those types of things because of insurance or lack of money or those types of things. And it's funny, we can go anywhere to get our teeth cleaned. We can go anywhere to get our broken bone fixed. But when it comes to mental health, there are definitely some haves and some have-nots in our world. And access is something that I think is an issue that needs to be discussed as we move out of this stigma. And as we talk more and more about depression and anxiety and mental health, I think that's a next step, is to make sure that as we begin to talk more about it, that we begin to ensure that we all have access to better mental health treatments and things of that nature.
Well, Daniel made a comment earlier that I thought was really interesting, that, as a society, we're very reactive instead of proactive. And I think what we've done is we've waited so long for these issues to arise that now there are so many issues that the system is overrun. And even when there are people in your area that can handle those situations, they have so many clients that they're not able to take on anymore. Because as a school principal, I would see mental health concerns all the time. But just like you said, Jonathan, the parent would come back and say, I know my child has this concern, but we don't have any way to pay for it. There is no way. We can't. You'll just have to help us manage as a school. Or they'll come back and say, well, I went to go seek help, but they can't see my kid for 8 months.
Right.
And it's like, there's all these barriers that are in place and that's what's always frustrating me, is when there's somebody who really wants to get help, but the system has been designed in a way that doesn't allow them to get that help. It becomes a frustrating experience. And Daniel, were you going to add something just then?
Yeah, I just wanted to say one of the projects that I'm working on is a nonprofit. I wrote a book last year or earlier this year called Recover EDU. It's about mental health in schools. And I had the opportunity to interview a family whose son died by suicide. And I donate the proceeds of the sales from that book to a fund that funds therapy for children. And then recently this week, I launched a matching campaign with several corporate donors, including my private company. And we're building a slush fund for children all over the country who can we will pay for their therapy. So, and we don't choose where they go. You just tell us who to pay and we pay it. So if you have a student that is struggling and needs therapy, you can reach out to me and I can connect you with that, and we can get them the help that they need. And the goal is to grow that fund and grow that fund and grow that fund, because access, the haves and the have-nots, the contrast is nothing short of alarming and disgusting and unacceptable. So Patrick's Purpose Foundation, if you donate, it's being corporately matched, and that money is 100%. There's no overhead. It just goes to pay for therapy for students across the country.
I love that. That's the kind of stuff that we need. Well, Kendrick, we'll wrap up with you. What are you doing to help cope and work through and continue to maintain?
Well, the biggest thing about it is understanding. So we talked about the depression side, but on the anxiety side, I have Crohn's, right? And so for that, you think about being a teacher and getting diagnosed. Like I had to leave my class so many times. And so just going through that, so that's when it starts to set in, right? You're like, okay, well, now I can't go this place. And I want to say for like 2 years, I didn't do a lot, right? Because I was so anxious about, I can't go here. So I end up going to a hospital, but when you go, they not only send you to the doctor for your stomach, the gastro doctor, but they have you see a therapist as well as a nutritionist all the same day. And so when that started happening, as I stated, I already had a therapist coming into the depression bout. What I do with that was the doctor described Humira. I know y'all seen the commercials. So I've been taking that for a while. And when I tell you, man, I seem like I've gotten life back. So besides taking that medicine, making sure that I stay up with those, I've now started running. So I did a marathon.
Wow.
Hey, it was real. But besides that, just getting into more of the media, but also being able to deposit into people so much and finding that satisfaction through that, man, that is how I'm coping. But like you say, the therapeutics, as far as taking medicine, but also just talking to someone and getting out that therapy is very important in coping too. So that's how I do it, man. Running and doing something I enjoy and not majoring in the minors.
There you go. Well, let me tell you, you five, I appreciate you and your vulnerability and honesty tonight and sharing a little bit of your journey. I hope for anybody listening or watching that if you think that you might be struggling with depression or anxiety, or you may know somebody who is struggling with those, help eliminate the stigma by not being afraid to seek out help. Whether that is talking to a therapist, taking medication, because just like Jonathan said, when we struggle with things like depression and anxiety, we know things to do to help us work through them. But when you're in the midst of that episode, you don't feel like doing it. And you need people who will say, get your butt up, we're going for a walk. Let's go and do this. Or how are things today? Be real with me. Don't tell me they're all good. Like, we need to have those things. And so the more we share our own journeys and the more we share our own struggles, we bring people to the table so they can stand alongside of us and say, me too. And so for you five today, I appreciate you having this conversation. And I hope that those listening were moved and found a kindred spirit. And we all know somebody who, whether it's ourselves or somebody in our family, who struggles with depression and or anxiety. It's that prevalent in our world today. So thank y'all for being a part of this. I hope everybody listening joins again next Thursday for a brand new episode of Honestly Let's Talk, every Thursday at 8 p.m. Or you can check out all the past episodes on iTunes, Spotify, or YouTube.